My name is Paula Must Try Harder McGuire. Nearly forgot my surname there. And I'm based in Glasgow, just outside of Glasgow now. And I have been adventuring since about 2012 now. We've caught up a few times during that time. And I work as an electronic note taker and a captioner for deaf people, which is a job that I love doing, and I've been doing it for a long time.
We've spoken a few times. So the first time we actually spoke was July 24th, 2018. And the title of that was Paula McGuire Must Try Harder, an unlikely adventurer who is an anxiety survivor. So during that episode, we actually, we talked more about, growing up in Glasgow, not being sporty, being quite shy and dealing with, childhood anxiety and how you learned to live with your anxiety. And you started to share more about sort of blogging and taking the negativity and turning it around, and the fact that you kept on trying and kept on learning and feeling that pride in your accomplishments and getting that joy from the new experiences. And you also talked about like the big mad swim around Britain and, dealing with panic attacks and failure and what you learned from the experience and adapting the challenge to the big mad splash. So we covered a lot in that episode. And then fortunately, we then caught up with you July 2020, where you shared more about being like an everyday, an adventurer, a trier, a failure, a failer, an author, and sort of trying a whole variety of different adventures and clients and different adventures and challenges. And you share more about the year of fear, becoming a different person, going on to do TEDx talks. Adventure is a full-time job. You talk about writing, beach cleaning, having a purpose, dealing with COVID, and getting used to the new normal. So that was a sort of a really full, in-depth episode that we did back in 2020. But obviously, we're in 2026 now. It's like 6 years has gone by, and I know that a lot of things have changed for you. But where should we start, Paula? Like, what has been going on?
You make my life sound so interesting, Sarah. That's why I love coming on this podcast.
Your life is interesting, Paula.
Well, things over the last few years have really, really changed for me in quite negative ways at times, but that have turned into quite positive things. And I guess I just wanted to reflect a bit today on why adventure has been so important in that journey, and the everyday adventure stuff of 2020 that you mentioned. In 2020, I was trying something new every day for the entire year, and I picked a leap year, so I had to try an extra one. It was 366 new things, and of course we were going through the pandemic as well at that time, so it started off really positively, and I had all this stuff lined up. I'd went and tried curling, I was doing unicycling, I went to taekwondo lessons. I was doing all this really, really interesting stuff. And then things just really changed in the March of that year for everyone. And it became more of a kind of a community challenge at that point, because I was thinking that I would probably give it up because it felt really trite to be posting these little things that I was trying every day. But quite a few people got in touch and said, no, we're enjoying just a bit of lightheartedness every day. So I kept it going, but of course, we couldn't really go outside the house for a lot of the time, so it became kind of an adventure in creativity more than anything. So it was like, right, look in your cupboard, what can you do that's new today? And I kept that going. I was really, really proud that I managed to finish the 366 things. I ended up doing some things like, I don't know if I mentioned this the last time, like I ate bugs. I tried making like bedsheet togas, and I was a toilet paper mummy for just really silly things that kept it really lighthearted for the year for people. And I was exhausted after that year because we were all dealing with something really, really massive. And every day I was trying to come up with something just a wee bit joyful that I could do. And it really, really cemented in me that was where my adventure lies. The last few years, and I'll go into it a bit more, but they've taught me that I am never going to be the person that travels far and wide and does these big momentous tasks and challenges, and it's just not it's not the way my brain works, but it's also just not physically possible for me anymore. It's always just going to be these little things that I can build into my life, but that hopefully inspire other people to build just little bits of adventure into your life, because not only does it do something for you physically and in the moment, but it is genuinely what's kept me alive through these last few years.
And I love those words like adventure in creativity, because I always think, from my perspective, I'm always like, oh, for me, it's almost like so much easier just to go out and walk every day, on a hike or a challenge, but to come up with a new sort of joyful activity to do every single day and 366 days, during the leap year, though. I mean, that does sound exhausting, but also joyful, but also just a lot of pressure to keep delivering, to keep creating, to keep, in a way, I don't mean perform, but when you've got people watching who are messaging you saying, "Oh, you're keeping me joyful, you're keeping me going," especially during the pandemic, which is such a tough time for so many people. Like, that does sound exhausting. When you came to the end of that year, were you dealing with burnout? Were you ready to just stop and, I don't know, like, relax? Like, or is that
Yes,
something oh, good.
absolutely. The end of that year, I was I was utterly delighted that I'd managed it. But at the same time, I was just frazzled because, as you know, I really struggle with the social side of things, and that extends to social media. I find social media really, really difficult. I find it difficult to build into my life because it doesn't come naturally to me, but also I find it a real huge pressure. I do get the anxiety of that. I've been bullied in my life before, and I struggle with the negativity of social media and things like that. And I know that a lot of people struggle with that. So by the end of that year, I was ready to just hang up my hat and say, right, I'm done. I've tried a lot of things. And that's come back around in the last year or so, that I have been really ready to just say, Paula has tried hard enough. Paula, Paula must not try anymore. She's kind of done. But it always comes back to how much good that these even tiny adventures do for me mentally, and I hope do for other people mentally as well. Jumping a wee bit further on to just this last year, I was diagnosed with autism at, what am I now, 44, and it came completely out of left field. I had no inkling that there was never any suspicion of autism in my background. And when I had the test and the diagnosis and, that process, it was actually the psychologists on that team that said, please don't stop doing the Paula must try harder stuff, because it is one of the most inventive ways that we have ever heard of coping with the way your brain works, and helping you to be part of something in a way that suits you best. So yeah, I was absolutely burnt out by the end of the 2020 challenge, and I have been burnt out since. But it always comes back to have a bit of rest and then see what you can do going forward, but in a more measured way that suits my life as it is now.
When did van life start for you, and are you still doing van life?
Van life was at the end of 2024. So about November 20, I moved into the van November the 1st, 2024, and I moved out of the van on May the 1st, 2025. So it was exactly 6 months that I did van life, and it was kind of enforced van life for me. I love watching people doing van life really well, and it looks amazing and it looks really fun, and I love people that have a van and do it in their spare time, and that's how they get away. That's the method of adventure, and I do think that I'll go back to that in later life when things are a bit more settled for me. But at the time, van life was completely not a choice. It was just the next step and how to get out of a situation that I was in. So I haven't really mentioned yet, but at the end of 2021, I had a brain hemorrhage completely out of the blue, had a stroke, developed epilepsy. And that for me was just a huge, I mean, it's a huge thing for anyone, but stroke changes your life in a way that nobody really explains to you, that it changes you. It physically changes you, but it also really mentally changes the way you think and the way you process emotions. And I just found it really, really difficult to get back out and start adventuring again. And then I lost my driving license because of the epilepsy for a while, and I didn't have those coping mechanisms of, I would take to the hills, like you, I would take to the hills if I was stressed, or I would go out open water swimming. And when you have epilepsy or you've just had a stroke, you can't do that. So all of those really built-in coping mechanisms that I had to deal with my mental health had been completely taken away from me. And then about a year and a half after that, my husband left. And this sounds like such a soft story. And at the time, I felt like, I've opened a mummy's tomb here. I'm cursed. It's the plagues of Egypt that are, are coming down upon me. But Jerry had been a really kind of a stalwart figure in my life for 15 years. Took a new path, and that was absolutely fine. But obviously, divorce is a really hard thing. But also, it was like the universe was saying, okay, so you've accomplished being an adventurer. You think you're an adventurer. Can you do it on your own? And that, I didn't know if I could. I'd never, he'd always been there. And I don't mean completely on my own. I have family, I have friends, but, not having that 24/7 person to bounce things off of and was a real challenge. And then my house got flooded. Completely flooded, and that's when van life started. To get back to your original question, I had to move out the house. It was completely destroyed. 4 ceilings had come in. There was damp mites in it was just horrendous. I was recovering from a stroke. I had to get out of the house, so I bought myself a van and lived with my dog urban van life for 6 months. And it was 6 really hard months. I I loved the van itself. I bought a converted old works van. It was a white van, beautifully converted inside. And me and the dog just had to live in and around Glasgow because I was working. So I had to get to my work in the morning, and I had to get my dog to my mum's house every morning so that I could get to work. So we had to just live urban van life for 6 months during the coldest 6 months of the year in Scotland. So I would love to tell you about all the amazing, adventures that we had in the van, but a lot of it was just dig down and survive.
Wow, Paula, that is a lot. I'm trying to process that is a lot of things that you have been that's a lot of cards that you have been dealt.
Yeah.
So I'm just mentally just going through because that is one hit after the other.
Yeah, it genuinely just felt like I said, the plagues of Egypt. It felt like, what next? What on earth? And I remember when the house was flooding, just standing in the water, laughing. I must have looked like a maniac because it was just one other thing for me to deal with, and just a range of different hellish things that had happened. And it did feel like the universe had just kind of turned against me for a while there. But I recognise now that it was just another part of the adventures. It was just another part of the, I don't like the word journey. It's overused, but it was just another part of that journey of me facing up to things that maybe I didn't want to face up to, or that I never imagined myself facing up to, and figuring out ways to cope with it. And again, I'm sitting now, I'm in my new wee house with my wee dog. I'm feeling well. Yes, I have health issues to manage, and things are still a bit difficult in that way, but I'm really, really proud of, all of those things that I've just spoke to you about, and where I am now, and how that sets me up for the next stage in my life. And there's no bitterness against any of it, and there's no negativity, because I really do feel like these things are where we learn most about ourselves, and where life teaches us most about ourselves.
What do you think has been your process? How have you dealt sort of emotionally with these highs and these lows that have gone on over the past couple of years?
Very badly at times, I think, Sarah. There have been a lot of just, yeah, me crying on the sofa or me crying in the van, but I think I was really, really lucky in that I had set myself up well for everything that happened, even though, you can never plan for these things. And everybody has ups and downs in their life. We're all going to deal with all manners of stuff, maybe not so close together as I've had to deal with them, but, we're all going to have deaths in the family. We're all going to have, health issues as we get older. This stuff happens. And I think that all of the adventures so far, and all the things that I've challenged myself to do on my own terms, have really set me up for these things that have happened not on my own terms. I think people who do go out and challenge themselves, even just, those little things that I tried during the try something new every day challenge, all of them add something to your strength. All of them add something to your belief in yourself. All of them teach you that I didn't want to do this, but I can. I will survive it. I have survived it. I will survive other things. And it's hard to shake those feelings once they're in there. You know yourself, you've taken on some incredible challenges and had your successes and failures, and you learn more about yourself, and you learn more about life from every one of them. And I had already had, 10 years of pitting myself against myself, because none of my challenges have really been about me winning against anybody else or me being the best at things. They've always been about me trying to improve my mental health, trying to improve the way that I look at life, and how I believe in myself, or don't believe in myself. And that's, I think, what set me up really well for this last couple of years of challenges that were completely out of my control. The stroke just happened overnight. One day I was absolutely fine. The next day I had a couple of fits over the next few weeks, and then I was taken into hospital, and they said that they thought that I had a brain tumour, and the hospital was saying to me and my family, it was around November time, and they were saying maybe start to prepare for Paula's last Christmas. And I remember there was so many emotions, but just the shock of, oh wow. But there was also me thinking, right, well, I've done a lot of stuff. maybe I can get through this as well. And eventually it turned out that I never thought I'd be happy for somebody to tell me that I'd had a stroke, but compared to the alternative, it was really good news. And I hugged the stroke consultant at the time, and it was just but it was a brain hemorrhage. So what they had been seeing was blood on my brain, and that's what was causing the fits. But moving on with a stroke and the propensity for more strokes, because what I have is some dodgy blood vessels in my brain that called a cavernoma, which might have been there for my entire life and could burst again. And that really puts a different spin on how you think about life, because it felt at the time like there was this time bomb in my head that could go off again at any moment. And at the time, it felt like a really, really, really scary, negative thing. And it took me such a long time to learn just to how go back outside the house on my own again. And even just the most basic things of, just taking my dog for a walk became really difficult mentally. But eventually, I can see now that the adventures from before really supported me in kind of dredging back up those feelings of, okay, you don't want to do this, you don't feel like you can do this, but look at what you've done before and let's build on that. And it's just been a process of that, really, Sarah, just reminding myself of things that I have achieved or failed at but survived, and And the Big Mad Swim, that complete failure of the Big Mad Swim really set me up for dealing with the failure of my marriage, the failure of my health, feeling like I'd failed when I had to move into a van, and all of these things could have really taken me down individually, because we all hate failing, and I particularly have a real fear of failing, but failing the swim showed me that I can fail on a really big stage and survive it. And I can't really explain a process as to how this would be possible for, I can't advise people on how to do this. I think it was just that I was really lucky and that I'd set myself up well.
One of the things I learned on my most recent trip was around this piece on acceptance. And I think when you adventure, or you take on these challenges and things happen that you have got limited control over, you can't, well, you can cry about it, but which is obviously a good release of emotions. But then you need to get to that point of acceptance, and the quicker you can get to acceptance, like, okay, well, this is what I've been dealt with. This is what I've got to handle. Okay, deep breath. Let's move forward. Let's handle this. So whether it is, that a health diagnosis, or the breakdown in the marriage, or my home's been flooded. Okay, the home's been flooded. What do I do next? Right, let's accept it and almost like move on. And I think adventure can really, or certainly for me, can teach me that getting to a place of acceptance as quickly as possible is a really powerful thing. And it's like what you shared as well with failure, because I do think failure is uncomfortable. It was a word that I almost didn't like talking about. I think many years ago, like I didn't like asking people on the podcast, or what happened when you didn't like, and I couldn't say the word. I didn't want to say the word like failure to somebody because of how it would make them feel. But then also, I think you get to a point where it's like, well, hold on, what were the lessons that were learned from that experience? And then when you have failed in a public way, again, you get to acceptance, like, okay, it's not that bad. This has happened. Okay. Okay. My family still love me. My friends still love me. I've still got options. There's still things that I can do over there. But you are still doing so many fun things and really still putting yourself out there. And there's two things in particular I want to talk to you about. Is one is the A to Z of adventure, and the other is what you did over Christmas time, which was Advent. Sure, which I thought was very, very clever marketing, by the way.
Thank you.
Let's go to the A to Z of adventure. How has that been going?
Yeah, well, the A to Z of adventure was my way of just kind of dipping my toe back into the world of adventure, because I'd had a long journey of recovery, and then with everything that was happening after that, I came to realise, as I said, that the big, month-long, year-long adventures maybe weren't for me, but I could definitely do some things of, trying something new, or just keeping myself out there and challenging myself. And yeah, the A to Z of adventure just came to mind as I'd done it a couple of years ago as just a reminder of things that I had done, that I tried, and trying to put them in A to Z order. But this time I am trying to do something different from all the letters of the alphabet. You guys know what an A to Z is. So I started with archery. If you've never tried archery, it's so cathartic, just aiming arrows at things safely. Obviously not not out in the
People.
wild. Not people, yes. I mean, you can think of people when you're doing it, but try not to involve them. Then I tried things like, I went bouldering, which I always thought looked really, really easy, Sarah, but it isn't. It was not, for me anyway, that was not easy. I went canoeing, which was just this incredible day in Perthshire. It was blue skies. It was me just sitting in a boat and just loving life, and I would do that again any day. I tried darts, which doesn't seem like an adventure, but if you've not tried it before, it was quite interesting. So yeah, I've been doing that over the last couple of years, just as and when I can, because again, my life has completely changed. I have post-stroke fatigue now, so a lot of days I can manage going to work and then I need to sleep. So it's just building little things into spaces in my life that I can, and that's what I love about this sort of adventure, is that it's accessible for most people. And I try to do things that are, so I went bouldering in a park that's completely free. I went and played darts in a pub that's free to go into. I try and do things that are accessible for people who, like me, are on a budget and on a time budget as well, just to show people that it doesn't have to be about taking 6 months out of your life. That you can do these things just ad hoc and hopefully for not too much money.
Is there anything that you come back to sort of again and again? Anything that, especially because you've tried such a variety of different activities and sports and challenges, have you found anything that for you has, I suppose, really, really clicked and you're like, oh, yes, this is my jam. This is what I want to continue doing? Or is it more in the trying, I suppose, and the doing of new things?
That is such a good question, because I sometimes really beat myself up about the fact that I don't stick to things. I am the epitome of all the gear, no idea. I I bought all the bikes when I learned to cycle and then moved on to something else. And I think it really is in the trying that I get the most mental stimulation, but also the most kind of solace as well, I think. And I've come to terms with the fact that I'm maybe just the woman who wants to try everything. I just want to be the person who tries it all. I still come back to things like swimming. I absolutely love swimming, having come from a background of being utterly terrified of water. I couldn't go near big puddles. Swimming for me is something that will always soothe my soul, particularly outdoor swimming, but I struggle to do that now because I can't do it on my own anymore because of epilepsy. So I struggle to fit that into my life. So I do always come back to that. And I do still love I love free hugs. So I'll go out once every couple of months with a sign into the city centre in Glasgow and just hand out free hugs. And if you've never tried it, honestly, it's such a joyful day. You will get so many people who say it's the first hug they've had all week, or they feel really welcomed to the city if they've maybe just come off a train from another city, and you're the first person they've seen. And yeah, that's just, so I come back to that a lot. But I think for me, it's in the trying, and I don't know if maybe that is my type of neurodivergent brain that just gets a lot out of I love the planning. I love the execution of the adventure. I love then reflecting on it afterwards. So I think I'll probably always be the person that is butterfly minded, and it's sad because I don't think I'll ever be really good at anything. uh, but I like the thought of being the person that inspires other people to go out and just be bad at stuff. Just try it for the love of it and not because you're going to win a medal. Because I'm never winning a medal, Sarah.
I also like the fact that the message that you're putting out there is like, you don't need to be the best at everything to enjoy something. So even if you're utterly terrible or rubbish, I don't know, even at darts, like you never hit the dartboard. If you enjoy trying and having a go, then don't stop just because you're not hitting the dartboard every time you throw the dart.
Absolutely, Sarah. And I think that if that is the only thing that I ever achieve in my life, to put out the message that you don't have to be good at something to do it, then I have fulfilled my life's mission. I think we're so good at getting to a point in life that we only do the things that we know we're good at because, like you said, we're all frightened of the word failure. We don't want to be seen to be bad at things. I think the things that we learn most from are the things that we are bad at. The things that we keep trying, even though people see us being rubbish. I went and tried golf at a driving range, and afterwards, the chap that worked there came up and said, "I've never seen that done before." and I hit the ball sideways and it nearly smashed the television to the side of me. And it was great because it meant that the next time I could go back and try and be better. I learned from that experience, and you learn from everyone in the room when you're bad at something because everybody's better than you. And there's something about those experiences that bolster you. Being good at stuff all the time does not teach you how to deal with challenges in life. Being bad at stuff and overcoming that teaches you how to deal with challenges.
And I always think it's almost like a step further as well, because actually it's not about the being the bad at doing things. It's about the judgment of other people who are thinking that you are bad at doing things and why should they do that. And when you can rise above or not care anymore and think, doesn't matter what other people think. I am doing this for me, for my enjoyment, for my mental health, for my curiosity to try new things. I think that's really, really powerful.
100%.
I want to bring it back a step as well because when you were talking earlier, especially about like not necessarily being good at things, but almost feeling a bit of a failure because you're not sticking at something. And I did just want to bring that back to your autism diagnosis because you said something at the beginning which was, or your doctor said, sort of like coping with how your brain works. And I think that that's a really interesting concept, that maybe this is how your brain works and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's like you enjoy these aspects of it. And I suppose, has anything else become clear, more clear for you now after your diagnosis of autism at 44? That has maybe just, I don't know, maybe been a bit of relief, or just open your eyes a bit more, or just made you think, oh, that makes sense
Yeah.
now.
So many things, Sarah. My entire life has become clear since having that diagnosis. And as I said, the diagnosis came out of not me, requesting. I'd never even thought of autism as something that was part of my life. It was actually when it was my stroke psychologist, when I was recovering from the stroke, who had just picked up on some things. I got to know her really well, and she was saying, maybe I feel like a lot of your life could be framed more positively if we went down this route of getting a diagnosis for you. And honestly, I was shocked because I had all those stereotypes about autism in my brain, and oh, I can't be autistic. I like hugs. Just utter nonsense. And since going through that process and talking to the the adult autism team, and there was things that I was saying that they were like, yeah, that's typical for someone with your diagnosis. And so things like, I've always been really clumsy, and that's one of the reasons that I never liked sport and I never tried sport. And they were like, yeah, because your proprioception's different, because you don't have a neurotypical brain. And things like being really, really socially awkward, really socially anxious since I was about 5, not dealing well with change, not dealing well with failure, everything needing to be routine, and me needing to know what's happening next. And it's become really obvious that that's why I structured my adventures in the way that I did. So, as you know, the first thing that I tried was the Glasgow 2014 Commonwealth Sports. And it was a really obvious list of 17 things that I could work my way through. It wasn't just this big, amorphous, challenge that I couldn't quite picture. It was a list that was very, very structured, very, very routine. And those are the kind of adventures that I fare better with, is things so the A to Z of adventure. I know where it starts, I know where it ends, I can tick things off. That works really well for my brain. Throw something in that's a bit different and I'll struggle with it. So even my adventures have been in keeping with my really, really structured brain, even though I didn't know that's what was happening. And things like, I cope with facial tics. I have done since I was about 5, and it frames them into context as well. And just the way that I've lived my life and how things have been really difficult socially for me, and in some situations that I've got myself into, the diagnosis has just really helped me to see, okay, maybe there's not an aspect of fault. Maybe it's just how it is. And And acceptance, the word that you said earlier, is just a massive part of that. Just accepting that, okay, this is my brain, not using it as an excuse, just realizing that that is how my brain works, and trying to put things into place that support myself and don't make things worse for my my brain.
Tell us about your advent, which I'm honestly, when I saw that on my social media, I was like, that is so clever. So how did you come up with it?
Honestly, who knows? Who knows where it came from? I think I just saw the word written down, the word adventure written down, and we were coming up to December. I think it was on maybe the 29th of November or something, and I was like, oh, adventure has advent in it. Let's do something
Yeah.
for December. And I was looking for something to do to bring myself back into the world of social media, because as I said, I really struggle with it, and I would much rather just hide away from social media. But I know that it's a good part of the adventures to get out there and to make it into a community. That's what keeps me going. So yeah, so I did 25 days of, and some of them weren't new things, some of them were, things that I was trying on that day, some of them were things that I'd tried before, and I just put something out every day to inspire people to bring a little bit more adventure into their December. So yeah, things like I revisited like things like the triathlon, beekeeping, free hugs, trying space hopping on a children's space hopper. Just different silly things that have been part of my life over the last few years.
And I love the one on the plane, when you're standing on a plane.
Yeah, the wing walking experience.
Wing
That was one.
walking, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the most fun experiences, honestly. You're basically strapped into what feels like a deck chair. Obviously, it's safer than that. And they just take off, and there you are at 5,000 feet, strapped to the top of a plane and out in the air. And it was, it was one of those moments, that you think, what am I doing with my life? How did I get to this, Paula? But
You're
it was.
living your best life. That's what you're doing.
And I love the photos because it's just ridiculous. The other one that was utterly ridiculous is the kind of human catapult, where you get bungee roped back and then kind of a let go, and yeah, you just swivel through the air. That was just one of those days that I was thinking, I'm here in a pink helmet being pulled back by a Land Rover and let go. This is utterly ridiculous, but also the best life.
Absolutely. And I love that, utterly ridiculous, but the best life. But you're also inspiring other adults to try new adventures. So you wrote a book, Adventures for Bored Adults, Games, Challenges, Activities and Treats. So congratulations on the book, and tell us more about it.
It was actually, I was commissioned by Penguin to write it. For me, writing has always been the dream, and Penguin asking me to write a book was the biggest dream. So I got to pick some of my favourite adventures and little things, little games that people can play, and different things that people haven't tried before, and just compile them into just little, it was, a little gift book type size page, a page for every adventure, just trying to get people to go out and, forage for food, or, do paper cutting, or just little things. And it was kind of on the back of the pandemic and people being forced to entertain their family or themselves with what they had in the house, and me trying something new every day. And I got to just write down some of those and try and inspire people to just add a tiny little bit of adventure or trying something new into their life. And that's kind of what my life is about these days.
And Paul, how can people connect with you? How can they follow along with you on social media? I know you're not super active all the time, but when you are active and doing your challenges, it is very fun to follow along.
Thank you. I am P Must Try Harder, so the letter P Must Try Harder, on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a website which is paulamustTryharder.co.uk, which I'm currently rebuilding, so it's not full at the minute, but and I'm enjoying the challenge of building a website, because it's something I've never done before. So yes, please come along, give me feedback. And I always say this, we talk about all the adventures and all the challenges, but the whole thing for me is that it's about mental health, and if I can support anybody through anything that they're going through, then please do get in touch, because that is why I do this. It's a privilege for me to be able to, go into schools and speak about mental health and about trying and failing and all that stuff. And for me, that's what it's all been about, and it's what it continues to be about. Is that if I can support people through what I've been through, then all of the wing walking and the rugby and all of that stuff has been worthwhile.
Yeah. And Paul, I'd love to leave you with the opportunity to share your final words of advice, final words of wisdom for the women out there who are maybe dealing with some really personal challenges at the moment, or maybe in that space where they're thinking, why me? Why me? Oh God, not this again. Oh no, I can't handle this. This is just something else coming on my plate. What is going on? What words of advice would you like to share?
Keep going. It does get better. And everything that you're going through right now, even though it doesn't feel like it, will be a lesson for you. And it sounds really trite and you don't want to hear it, but it will bolster you in the future, and it will be something that you can look back on and say, look what I got through, look what I survived. What am I going to do next?
Paula, thank you so much for coming back on the Tough Girl Podcast Extra to share more about your updates, what's been going on, the lessons that you've learned, and the amazing inspiration that you are creating to inspire more adventures and challenges for adults and children, and to encourage more people to try new things and to step outside their comfort zone.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah, and for doing this wonderful podcast that I, for one, take a lot of encouragement and joy from.
Hey tribe, how you all doing? I really hope you enjoyed the episode with Paula McGuire. What an absolute inspiration, like what she has just been through, what she has survived, and how she shares, I think is just absolutely inspiring. If you haven't listened to Paula's previous episodes that she's done with her, if you visit toughgirlchallenges.com and just search for her name, they will pop up. But the last time we spoke to Paula was in 2020. The title of that podcast, Paula McGuire, Everyday Adventurer, Anxiety Survivor, Trier, Failure, Author. She's an absolute inspiration. It's always amazing to catch up with previous guests. If you go on the website as well, toughgirlchallenges.com, you can visit the Tough Girl Podcast Extra webpage and you can see all of the Tough Girl Podcast Extra episodes. This is when we go back and catch up with guests who've been on the podcast previously. I personally really, really love these episodes, especially when there's been a little bit of a time gap as well. And you can just, because I think it's very powerful to go back and listen to the earlier episodes and then see how people have changed over the past 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, or even longer, which is amazing, how they've grown and developed, what has changed in their life. So, for example, Jen Benson, we caught up with her. She's a running coach, author, and now studying for her PhD. She's written a number of great books as well called The Path We Run, and shared more about her ultramarathon adventures. I share a lot of every 6 months I do a solo reflections episode, so you can listen to all of those episodes as well. But it's just amazing to hear, what the women have been up to since we last spoke to them. Earlier on this year, beginning of January, we spoke to Sabrina Pace-Humphreys, who shares more about UTMB, trail running, and building community. She shares more about the journey of being a runner and an advocate. Alex Nemeth has been back on the Tough Girl podcast as well. Alex is a mountaineer and she has climbed the 7 summits. She's recently just written a book, which she's very kindly sent to me, and which is fabulous. So I'll be doing a book review and sharing that on the socials. But yeah, it's really, really amazing to catch up with the women, just see what they have achieved over the past couple of years. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, then please do make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. I'd love for you to tell one friend about the Tough Girl podcast. That is the best way to spread the message. You can also support the work through Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl podcast. And you can follow along on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and all those wonderful social media platforms. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.